Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Penna Dexter.
Thank you very much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Over the weekend, a full slate of Republican candidates for president, and also some of the ones that have not announced yet, campaigned in South Carolina. And that is a state where there's a lot of military. National security was a huge theme there. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the program and let you weigh in on the candidates. Also, we have a new action item here at Point of View, and it's because there's a vote taking place in the House of Representatives this week on the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. This bill would ban abortions 5 months and later into a pregnancy. And science is now showing us the baby can feel pain at that point, maybe even way earlier. And this was supposed to be voted on during Sanctity of Life Month in February. We reported on the shenanigans that took place. Some pro-life, actually, we thought pro-life Republican women sort of pulled the plug on it. But they are going to be voting on this common sense piece of legislation, and you have the ability to take action on it. Many of you receive emails from Point of View, and we've sent you one on this. And if you didn't get one, you can go to pointofview.net to the Take Action section, and you can send information, actually your opinion, to your member of Congress on this. We've got something written out for you, and you can revise that, or you can just send what we wrote. The information is correct. We'll talk more about that later, but we're going to talk for a good portion of the program today on education, specifically Common Core. Of course, we've addressed this many times here on Point of View, and this is going to be a presidential campaign issue. It's very important to parents. Education always is, and it's important to the future of the nation as a whole. With me to discuss this today is someone who actually has helped me a lot to understand the issue, because she is such a researcher and sends out emails, which I read. Her name is Donna Garner, and Donna has taught for more than 33 years. She's a retired teacher now, but she has done more than just teach. She's also been an activist. She's helped write the standards in Texas a couple of different times, and she was actually part of the Reagan, George H.W. Bush administration on the National Commission for Migrant Education. She's done so much that I don't want to take the whole segment talking about that. I would just want to introduce her. Donna, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Penna. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm great, and I want to ask you about Common Core, and I know that's a huge subject, because Common Core is really the name for the effort now of the federal government to control education. It's an effort that's been going on for decades under various different names: Goals 2000, School to Work, Careers, No Child Left Behind, Race to the Top. Now it's Common Core, and it's actually a great name. They are always coming up with better names until we expose what it's really about, and then they have to come up with another name. But Donna, as we look at this, I mentioned that this is a campaign issue, and we now, as conservatives, have the ability to say that the front runner, really Jeb Bush, supported Common Core. There are problems with it, and there are candidates who really get it, aren't there?
There are a few, Penna. There are a few that really get it. A lot of them act as if they're getting it just because they're having an epiphany because of having started to run for the presidency, which I'm always a little bit doubtful of those that just decide quickly to support it. And I've followed very carefully who has actually supported it from the very beginning and which ones are into rebranding and which ones are really just half-hearted, because now that the public is turning against Common Core, it's become popular to take a stand against it. But what I want to do is I want to support somebody who really and truly understands it in his heart, in his soul, is committed to repealing it, somebody who isn't going to cave and compromise in the process. Because Common Core is, I appreciate so much you're talking about it, Penna, and I know you've done this many times before, but it is desperately important, because we're talking about the future of our nation, this and all succeeding generations coming after it, and we're going to lose our way if we lose our this present generation in the next one. So let me just first of all state that, of course, I was a teacher for many, many years and have been very highly involved in education issues ever since I left the classroom. And even while I was there, of course, I was still teaching full-time and still involved, because it's such an important issue to try to save our kids. There's not anything more important in the life of anyone, a grandmother or grandfather or our society, than these precious children. And, we want to do what's right by them. And one of the things that concerns me the most is the real title for Common Core. We see this all the time. Even one of our leading conservative people who spoke out just today, I was listening to this, and he's really wrong on this. They bought the myth, the liberal media likes to say it's only Common Core English and Common Core Math. Well, let me tell you the real deal, because I'm looking right now at the link that came from the Common Core website, the official website. And this is what Common Core English standards really are. This is the title. Now listen to this. The Common Core State Standards for English Language Arts and, now get this, literacy in history, social studies, science, and technical subjects.
So it's not just English and math.
That takes in every subject in the public schools except for math, and then, of course, they have Common Core Math.
So, Donna, why is that a problem, though? Because if you just read that as a citizen of the United States, you'd say, what's wrong with that? We want those things, but there's a fundamental flaw to that, isn't there? Okay.
Step 2, number 1 is understanding that Common Core is over everything being taught in the public schools. Number 2 is understanding the 2 philosophies of education, and there are only 2. And nobody's ever been able to tell me any differently, because I've been there and I know, and every teacher who's been in the classroom knows the same thing. There are 2 philosophies. I have taken the liberty to name them, Type 1 and Type 2.
Okay, we've got a minute before the break, so what are the 2 philosophies?
The 2 philosophies, Type 1, knowledge-based, academic, focused on clear goals. Most of the time you're going to have right or wrong answers on your tests. They're measurable goals. This is phonics and phonemic awareness and decoding skills and grammar and usage and knowing your math facts quickly and fluently, studying science, studying the scientific method, all those things basically that's what we used to study up until about 15 years ago. And those are the skills that sent my husband always says that those are the skills that sent our people who discovered went to the moon and discovered the universe and have been in a lot of these planets now, they learned all that on a big chief tablet.
All right, let me jump in, Donna, because we're about on a break. So we've just described the number 1 philosophy of education, which is the one that we kind of thought we had and want. Those of us, at least those that have not been looking at it too closely. But there's another philosophy. Donna's going to describe it after the break, and we're going to continue to talk about Common Core. Go to the website, pointofview.net. You'll see that Hillary actually has a role in this.
The Point of View Commentary with Kirby Anderson.
Should churches and Christian organizations be concerned if the Supreme Court legalizes same-sex marriage? You can answer that question with the phrase, "It's going to be an issue." Those are the words of Solicitor General Donald Verrilli. During the oral arguments on the same-sex marriage case, the question of how this would affect religious institutions was raised numerous times. At one point, the lead counsel in the case tried to assure the justices that declaring a constitutional right for so-called gay marriage would not require clergy to perform same-sex marriage ceremonies. Later in the oral arguments, the answers were not as encouraging. Justice John Roberts asked if a religious school that had married housing would be required to afford such housing to same-sex couples. The Solicitor General didn't really answer that question by asserting that the federal government doesn't have a law banning discrimination in housing based upon sexual orientation. But as sure as day follows night, you can be assured that such a law would be implemented either through the legislature or through the judiciary. Christian colleges and seminaries take notice. Justice Samuel Alito asked the Solicitor General about the right of religious groups to keep their tax-exempt status. After all, the Internal Revenue Service was allowed to strip Bob Jones University of their tax-exempt status back in the 1980s because, at that time, they had a policy against interracial dating. Justice Alito asked if the same principle would apply to a university or college if it opposed same-sex marriage. The Solicitor General paused and stumbled over his answer. First, he claimed that he couldn't answer the question without knowing more specifics, but then he admitted that it's certainly going to be an issue. I don't deny that. Justice Alito, it's going to be an issue. Yes, it's going to be an issue for churches and Christian organizations if same-sex marriage is legalized in all 50 states. He seems to be saying that these groups can either have a biblical view of marriage or their tax-exempt status, but they can't have both. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Welcome back to Point of View. I'm Penna Dexter. My guest is Donna Garner. And up at the Point of View website at pointofview.net, you can see Donna's picture and bio. And you can also click through to a couple of articles. One she wrote, and it's called Hillary Clinton Found at the Rotten Center of the Common Core National Standards Initiative. It starts out like this. A veteran educator says parents can thank Hillary Clinton for the Common Core national standards that have been thrust upon schools across the country. Now, if you've listened to Point of View for many years, 20 years or more, since I've been around, we have talked about education on this program, and we have watched as the different names for national education power grabs have kind of cycled through the system. When you talked about Goals 2000, back under George H.W. Bush, it started, and then through the Clinton years with School to Work, the Careers Bill with President George W. Bush, No Child Left Behind. We had Race to the Top. We have Common Core. They're really different names for sort of the same thing, and we'll kind of get to the bottom of that with Donna. But Hillary was very involved as the wife of Bill Clinton as governor of Arkansas in education, and she brought that to the White House. And I'm going to have Donna talk a little bit about it in a few minutes after we get through the philosophies. But if you want more information on it, and this is why I say it's a campaign issue, not only between the Republicans who are trying to get the nomination, but in the general election, this should be a huge issue because Hillary is behind the progressive direction and transformation of public education in the country. She is very much responsible. There's another article up there that Donna also provided me with. Hillary partnered with Saul Alinsky, and it's sort of his methods, who she admired and even wrote a thesis about in this transformation of public education. And so I'm going to ask Donna a little bit about, what the transformation is and what the purpose is, and we'll get back to these philosophies. Donna, you mentioned the sort of traditional way of education, philosophy number 1. What is philosophy number 2, and how does that relate to Common Core?
Okay, yes. Philosophy number 1, just to repeat a little bit of that, that means it's objectively scored, in other words, right or wrong answers, knowledge-based, deep content. Okay. Type 2, the key word is subjective. Everything is subjective with type 2. That means that you are going to direct your curriculum toward the affective domain, which means that you're entertaining, that your students are going to tell their opinions, and they're going to give their, display their emotions. They're going to talk about all kinds of, emotional subjects, and they're going to write personal essays, and all of it's graded, of course, subjectively. Well, the problem comes with the subjectivity, because in a classroom, and certainly with national standards, anything subjective means that the people putting together the standards, or the people who are putting together the Common Core assessments and grading them, they're basically graded on the value system of the evaluator. Now, we know in the classroom you're going to have some subjective things, such as an essay. Any kind of compositions or essays are always going to be subjective. There's no way you can get around it. Some teachers come up with rubrics, and they say this is more objective, and it's a little bit more so. But the bottom line is, it's still, when I grade my students' papers, and still, if I were in the classroom today, it would be the same thing. You basically base them on your own opinion as to how you think the student did, and so on and so on. But those are limited. And that's the whole idea, that with type 2, you're going to have totally, in other words, this is going to introduce all kinds of what we call the multicultural, politically correct, your environmental extremism, the social justice agenda, which leans heavily on the LGBTQ agenda. It's going to lean heavily on the diversity, white privilege, on and on and on. That's where you get all of that.
So if you have English and math, Donna, if you have English and math.
Everything.
How do you get that subjectivity into math?
All right. So word problems. Of course, in the word problems. And that's what happens. Let me go back and explain why that title that I read to you a while ago is so important. Because what they do in Common Core, because it is type 2, there is no doubt that type 2 controls Common Core. And there are, as I say, 2 philosophies. You've got 2 camps, and you've had these for a long time. Hillary, of course, definitely supports, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes, about how she really was involved in bringing this type 2 to the agenda to the forefront in our public schools. But the reason it's so damaging in the Common Core is this. Common Core English tells teachers that they are to speak, particularly in the secondary level, that they are only to, they're not going to be able to teach anything but informational text 70% of the time. All right, informational text, then, what they do is they take text, which is built upon subjects in social studies, science, technical subjects, and history, and so forth, but they bring in little snippets of whatever their social agenda is, and they make that the curriculum. Well, teachers who, for instance, an English teacher does not have time to teach the great classics, when you only have, 30% of the time when you could teach the great classics, and of course the classics take a lot of time to teach. Well, why are the classics important, Penna? Well, because most of your classic writers grew up cutting their teeth on the Bible. Now, whether they lived the Christian walk or whether they lived the Judeo-Christian walk, that's another thing, but they studied the Bible. And so they infused their characters with right and wrong, good and evil. You have your protagonist, your antagonist. You have, there's a definite difference in the two. And there are many biblical truths coming from the Old and the New Testament, which are infused in your classics. That's where you basically teach students. Character education is taught within the classics. Well, remove those from the classroom, And instead, you implement the informational text, which has been carefully selected with a purpose to indoctrinate children the way they think. And, of course, the whole idea is to make sure that they tell what they think and they base all their decisions on emotions. One of the popular
but is there, Donna, is there an assessment that says, okay, you're thinking wrong or you're thinking right? Are you graded on the way you're thinking?
Well, let me give you an example of a lesson that's very popular going across the United States right now as a part of the Common Core Type 2 philosophy. And everything's done in groups. You teach everything what they call cold reading. These informational texts, let's say you're studying the Declaration of Independence for a few minutes, you don't let the kids learn anything about what came before they wrote the Declaration of Independence. You don't study the founding fathers and their lives and what influenced their writing and what was going on at the time. You give them the piece, and then you tell them, now tell what your opinion is. And as I say, one of the popular...
So without really context, no context.
No context at all. And that's deliberate because you strip that away from the kid's background. And let me tell you this example. All right, you've got a social studies lesson. It's a Common Core lesson, and so you're the teacher, and you divide the kids up into your different groups, and everything's in group. Everything is group think. There's no independent thinking. It's all group think and group opinion, and group comes out with what they think. You divide up, you're in a group. Let's say you have 4 children in the group. Okay, you've got 2 who are supposed to tell, they're supposed to give documented evidence or explain or, support the idea that the Holocaust took place. Well, those kids are going to be going to websites. Everything, of course, is done with websites anymore. Everything's digitized. So those kids are going to be going to some really good websites. They're going to look at the Holocaust Museum. They're going to look at some really good things that are out there. And there's some fine, documentation that's been done on that. But the other 2 children are going to be charged with supporting the idea that the Holocaust never occurred. Now, let's see, what websites are they going to be looking at? They're going to be looking at all the websites that, of course, are going to go against anything.
I've got to jump in here because we're up on a break, Donna. But I would say, too, that parents, they don't get to look through what websites kids are going to see beforehand like they would a textbook. We will continue to describe Common Core, really getting to the root of this, ladies and gentlemen. I think this has been needed here on Point of View, to get to the root of it, what is really wrong with it, so that you can talk about it and articulate it and protect your own kids and the kids of America. But I want to send you to pointofview.net, not only for the information on Common Core, but also our action item today. It's important and timely because the House leadership is going to actually has scheduled a vote this week, probably Wednesday, on the Pain Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. This is banning abortion after 20 weeks. That's 5 months pregnant. And this is something that should have been done a long time ago. I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. And when you think of the fact that a child can feel pain and yet be aborted at that time, it's time to ban those abortions. You can weigh in on this with your member of Congress. Go to pointofview.net.
Maybe you've noticed, but Christians find many things to disagree about. But one thing that all true Christians do is pray. Point of View Radio has a plan to help you join with your family from sea to shining sea and pray for America. It starts by getting our new booklet, Pray for America, and we'll also send you occasional reminders and updates on special needs to pray for. One need that we know about is to pray for the Supreme Court. Over the next few months, they're considering the definition of marriage and whether or not to force every state to accept the fiction of so-called same-sex marriage. When the foundation of your house is compromised, the entire structure is in danger, and this decision may seriously undermine our culture's foundation and fuel a growing attack on religious freedom. Please visit our website. Look for the Pray for America picture on the right side of our homepage. You may have to scroll down just a bit. pointofview.net. Join people all across the land and pray for America. Visit right now, pointofview.net. Point of View will continue after this.
listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Penna Dexter.
We're talking public education here on Point of View. Let's open up the phones, 800-351-1212. My guest is Donna Garner, and Donna is, well, she's a retired teacher, but she does a lot of research and informing of people on education. She really sees the trends, and that's what we're talking about right now. We want to get to the root of what is Common Core. And Donna, you presented, of course, a couple of philosophies of education, one the more traditional way that, I mean, I even see that when I was educated back in the 60s, I was beginning to get the second view of education in my California schools. But that just kind of dates me. But, you have said they stripped the faith-inspired classics out. There's hardly any time for that. You've got more affective feelings-based education. You've got people in groups, and you've got both sides of an issue that's really a non-issue. The Holocaust, for instance, happened. It's history. But they're allowing people to debate that. And so, you talked about where they would find this information. One place is websites. And as I mentioned, even if a parent were not happy with that type of curriculum, they might not even know what's happening, would they?
Right, and what do you think if your children were the ones who were placed to do, to put forth the support ideas that the Holocaust never occurred? Can you imagine the kind of websites they would stumble on?
Ugh.
A lot of those, no doubt, would be put out there by ISIS and by their, the whole Islam terrorist thing. They're trying to steal our kids through social media anyway. And those children, how would you like it as a parent for your children, without your knowledge, to stumble on one of those websites where, of course, they want to play down the Holocaust. They hate the Jews. So, and then the group comes back together, and then they decide as a group whether they think it happened or not.
Great.
I mean, that's
so
all.
If the majority decides one way, your kid's in the minority, and they're already at a disadvantage.
Got it. You got it, Penna. And that's why it's so damaging. And that's the way it's going to be taught. You're not going to have the deep fact-based knowledge that needs to be put in the classroom by the teacher, and the kids working together and working through it, reading the great pieces of history and literature. And you're not going to have that deep background knowledge to help students to be able to judge whether something is factual or is based upon myth. So they're going to be stripped of that, and that's child abuse. That's a type of child abuse. We're going to be sending children out into the world without the ability to recognize charlatans and people who are liars and people who are who are just misdirecting them. It is just really very, very, very serious.
We're taking your calls at 800.
Curriculum of Common Core.
We're taking your calls at 800-351-1212. Donna Garner is my guest. We're talking about Common Core. And let's go now to California and speak with Chris. Chris, you're on Point of View. Thanks for calling in.
Hi, how are you guys doing today?
Great.
This is a great subject for you guys to cover. A lot of people don't know about it. I look at the movement behind this as being actually the spirit of Antichrist, because there's no black and white anymore. Everything's turned into a gray area where anything goes. And it amazes me how many Christian parents will actually, let their kids go to public schools that are teaching this stuff, with all the lesbian and gay agenda that's being pushed. And, the whole bathroom issue. I think I talked to you before about having the separate bathroom for them. And I just don't understand why, people are just going with the flow. But it kind of reminds me of, the sign of the end times. You look at 2 Timothy 3, and, people will be, the lovers of themselves and, arrogant, and, it's kind of like whatever makes you feel good. But then on the other hand, you can't really blame people, because that's what, a lot of the big pastors in the country are teaching people. There's no solid doctrine anymore.
Okay, well, Donna, let's let Donna Garner weigh in. Chris, thank you so much for calling. This is a good point. Donna, first, one point is, why do Christians allow their kids in the public school? I think a lot of us believers, we trust the public schools and the teachers, and we don't realize that this is coming down from on high, and there's a carrot of money there. that comes from the federal government. So part of it is just lack of knowledge, isn't it?
Right, but Penna and Chris, my heart breaks to have to tell you this, but it's not just in the public schools. Because, let me tell you what's happened if you don't understand this, and there may be some listeners who don't know this. You know, David Coleman was the architect of the Common Core. When he got through doing his damage there, he moved right straight over and became the head of the college board. Next thing he did was to publicly announce, which he's living up to this. He publicly announced that all products put out by the college board would become Common Core aligned. These are the products.
So it's really K through college.
Now, wait a minute. That's right, because listen to what the College Board produces. The SAT, all AP courses and tests, and the pre-AP. So look at your private schools, and look at your homeschoolers. How many homeschoolers, of course, take SAT tests? How many of your private school kids have, they have AP courses in the private schools, too, and the SAT test? This is so pervasive, Penna. It is so dangerous. And the whole thing, of course, is to push, as Chris was saying, relativism. And the whole idea that there is no right or wrong. What a dangerous thing this is to push in our society. And so the point is, we all believe you need to have choice in education. Parents need to have the choice as to what they want to do with their children. But the problem is that if everything is polluted with the Common Core, if your private schools, your public schools, your homeschooling, your charter schools, if everything is polluted with this same type 2 relativism, which is absolutely steeped in the social justice agenda, then we're going to have a country that is just, we're just going to be terribly deceived, and we know that the great American way is going to cease. So this is very, very serious.
It's transformative, and it's not enough, I guess you're saying then, Donna, to protect your own child, homeschooling or whatever. If you want them in college, they're going to have to learn enough to pass the SAT. And if you're in a Christian school, you're probably going to see a lot of this seeping in. And again, as you said, they have control of what it takes to get into college. So most parents, it's just not enough to protect your own child. We all need to be involved and aware, don't we?
Absolutely. And I don't want to be, just a doomsayer here. I want to
Well, that's why I asked you on. I want the truth.
That's right. And we can do some things about it, Penna. For one thing, our students do not have to take the SAT. They can take the ACT. Now, there is a new ACT, which is supposedly aligned with the Common Core, but the older one is still in place. And we could take the ACT. We could also take our children. Dr. Duke Pesta, who has taught in a university setting for many years, has said that colleges and universities are desperate to get really good students, and that if you take your child to a college or university and you build a pretty good case and say, would you please give my child your local test, your department test. Do any kind. He can write. Let him sit right here and write an essay right in front of you. In other words, if you can convince them that your child is prepared on the basics and can do well, then most colleges are not going to they're going to go ahead and let them in because they want to get good students. So we're not necessarily held captive at this. And of course, the main thing too is that you, as a parent, you can still expose your children to the great classics. They may have to read them at home or during the summertime, and you need to sit and discuss them with them, and you can still enrich their curriculum yourself. It takes a lot of extra work, but you can still do it. Yeah. And of course, the main thing I subscribe to is that first of all, parents need to teach their children how to read. You cannot depend upon the Common Core schools anymore at all to teach them to read.
Is that by design?
Is not systematic. Well, of course it's by design, and I know that was I know you really knew the answer to that, Penna, but we know that, of course, it is. Because if you can dumb down America, then anybody is going to be, we're all going to be fools. In other words, if we can't read for ourselves, then we always have to take the word of somebody else. One of the main things that's really wrong with Common Core, along with many other things, is that it does not teach cursive writing. Well, why is that a really bad thing? Well, let's think about it. Your primary documents are all written in cursive writing. If children cannot write cursive writing. They can't read cursive writing, which means that when they go to a museum or they, even look at the letters that came from their grandparents and their historical forefathers, they can't read any of
how
this.
sad. That's really sad.
It is sad. I mean, it's just very, very sad. These people who came up with this, I promise you, there is evil at foot here. They really have a plan.
Donna Garner is my guest, and we're going to talk about the shift that happened from education to training for the workforce. This is where Hillary Clinton comes in, and I'm going to let Donna explain this after the break. It sounds practical to train people for the workforce, and certainly we need to be trained for the workforce, but that is not the only purpose of schools. In fact, it shouldn't be the primary purpose of schools. We'll take your calls, 800-351-1212, when we come back.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
We're talking about education, specifically Common Core, and our guest is Donna Garner, and we're taking your calls at 800-351-1212. Let's go to Bob in Louisiana. Hi, Bob. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, how you doing today?
Great.
The bottom line is we can talk about this until we're all blue in the face, but the bottom line is it's the lack of common sense with every one of our politicians when they continue to keep putting individuals in charge of our children's education and not learning from their mistakes. They don't look at the past anymore. They are looking at only at the time moment. They're not looking at the past and learning from the past. They just keep moving forward, and they keep making more and more mistakes. And now you
I don't know that it's a mistake, because I think there's a plan here that they are following.
Well, the plan is it's not working. Number one, 1963, when they took prayer out of schools, juvenile crime jumped up 600%. Teen pregnancy out of wedlock jumped up 750%. You know, if you could put God into the hearts of these children when they're young, you give them the fear of God, of knowing that God is watching them. And not only that, you're educating them and stimulating their mind to know that there is a higher power than their own parents. And it really, you know, it does start in the home. You know, they want to take away the Ten Commandments, but yet almost every one of the Ten Commandments is being broken every single day. You put a Bible
Bob,
in
I thought you
child,
wanted to talk about the workforce.
I do. And the workforce, the problem is when they, you know, you're going to train them in schools. Okay, that's fine. I mean, the kids do need some type of training. I mean, we used to have the D&E programs. We used to have the after school where you could go to these automotive schools or air conditioning, refrigeration, and all of these other things. They were good and they worked. But the problem is all of our jobs are being transported overseas. So what's going to happen when these kids get out and cannot find a job? I mean, most of the college students are getting out, and they're not able to find a job in the field that they went to college for.
Okay, good point, Bob. Thank you so much. I hate to cut you off a lot. I want Donna to weigh in, though, because, Donna, it's just silly to try to train for a changing workforce and neglect the education of the whole person, isn't it?
Right, Bob, thank you for your comments. Let me quickly go through this, and this is something that I came up with. It's a little graphic, but I can just say it out loud. I mean, I just explain it to you. I want you to picture this in your mind, and this is the graphic, and I came out with this in 2009. That's about the time the Common Core standards started the process, because I saw through it, and good classroom teachers already know this, but I'm going to go through it again. Okay, listen to this. This is the plan now. National standards lead to national assessments, which lead to national curriculum, which leads to the national teacher evaluations, with teachers' salaries tied to how well their students individually do on the national assessments, which causes the teachers then to teach to the national assessments each and every day, which causes the classroom then to be indoctrinated, tied to whatever's in the national standards. And the big kahuna is at the very end, which is the worst part, because what we call the Common Core Standards Initiative, I'll refer to it as CCSI, which is the standards, the assessments, and the whole business. But the last piece is where you also, in CCSI, have a national database of students, teachers, parents, which contains very personally intrusive information. And that's what the bottom line is. That's what they want. They want all of our personal data. They want to track these kids from cradle to the grave, which brings in Hillary. Okay, we ready for that?
Yes, we're ready.
Okay. All right, and I lived through this. I walked through it. It was a personal thing, and I'm telling you my own personal story. I was teaching back in the early 80s, and up until that time, the classroom was to be spent on knowledge-based academic content. We were trying to help students to learn to be good readers, good writers, et cetera, et cetera. We had problems, of course, and we'd gone through some pretty bad years in there when we didn't focus on the knowledge-based academic content, and so we needed to do better. We started teaching grammar and usage again, and we tried to bring some of this back. Well, about that time, here came the National Committee on, I don't say it's not committee, excuse me,
National Center
on Education and the Economy, NCEE. Now, NCEE was run by Mark Tucker, but Hillary Clinton, Ira Magaziner, and Governor Mario Cuomo were all in it together with Mark Tucker. And their plan was to move the country from what I said a few minutes ago, type 1, which was knowledge-based academic content, into type 2. Okay? How to do it. All right, this is what they did. They built up this big thing working with Robert Reich, who was the Secretary of Labor, and they decided, okay, if we can get the businessmen in the country, or make it look as if the businessmen are saying, oh, you know, we want our students to have such, our employees to have such and such and such. We can make a big report on this. We can do this. And so they came up with the STANS report. And the STANS report was built upon this massive survey, supposedly, that was sent out by the NCEE. And this is about, probably middle of the 1980s, somewhere in there. And what it did, what they came out with, they said at the end, they said, what the businesses want is not knowledge-based academic content. We want employees who have good interpersonal skills.
Don't care if they can read, huh?
Right. And see, that's what moved the classroom. And I was in the classroom, and I was moved just like everybody else was.
But is that really what the businessmen wanted?
Of course not. What they actually wanted was people who could read and write well enough to be able to read the instruction manuals and carry out the processes in the business, whatever the business was. And they needed people to have good, strong, common sense skills that were knowledge-based. But that's why this was carefully crafted, because the end result by Hillary and company was to create worker bees. Now, this is what they wanted. They wanted to make it was almost like an oligarchy. In their mind's eye, they wanted to have about 8 to 10% of the population who actually had type 1, who actually had a deep content knowledge, okay? The rest of the country was to become worker bees.
All right, I have to jump in, Donna, and we are almost at the end of the hour. I don't want to end this. Do you have another 15 minutes to stick with us after the top of the hour?
I do if you do.
Okay, good. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll continue along this line. I can't let her stop because we need to get to the end of the story of the responsibility that Hillary Clinton had. You could read over the break, too. It's pointofview.net. There are a couple of articles about it. But I think I want Donna to explain it and also call in if you want to weigh in on this. And we're going to be talking later in the program about the candidates. And the question I'm going to have for you, just so you can be thinking about it, is does a candidate need to have experience in politics to run for president? Because, Rick Santorum said this weekend, it's not really a job for somebody who's getting on-the-job training in the presidency. So we'll talk a little bit about that later in the program. 800-351-1212. I want to point you to our action item. It's crucial that you weigh in with your member of Congress on the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. They're going to be voting on it, finally, to ban these abortions based on the child feeling pain. You can go to our Take Action item at pointofview.net. We'll be back after these messages.
What would you say is the key to revival in America? Would you say it's unbelievers turning from their sin? 2 Chronicles 7:14 seems to say it's Christians God is looking at before granting an awakening. You probably know it. God says, if my people, the ones called by my name, humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. God doesn't expect those without his Spirit to lead the way. He's looking at us. So, did you pray today? Did you pray for America? Point of View Radio urges you to visit our website and get your free copy of our new booklet, Pray for America. When you do, we'll also send you updates on special needs to pray for, like the Supreme Court. Visit our website. Look for the Pray for America picture on the right side of our homepage, pointofview.net, pointofview.net. Join people all across this land and pray for America. Visit right now, pointofview.net. Point of View will continue after this.
I
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kirby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. Each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Penna Dexter.
I asked her to stay, and she agreed. She is Donna Garner, and she's a retired school teacher, but she has studied the trends in education for really decades. She helps us understand what's facing the country and how transformative the education system is coming down from the national level. And a lot of us forget the real interest that Hillary Clinton had in education from the time that she was the first lady of the state of Arkansas. And Donna has been explaining this, and there's also an article by Donna at pointofview.net and another article about the tactics and the ways in which Hillary and others went about this transformative agenda that's actually had big impact. And so, Donna, just continue, because there was this center, National Center on Education and the Economy, and they duped the American people into thinking that business leaders wanted good personalities and didn't care about reading, which wasn't true. But they've actually succeeded in dumbing down our education system, haven't they?
Right. And what happened was, then George W. Bush was elected, and his administration came in with the emphasis on personal responsibility. They did come up with No Child Left Behind, which was a state-oriented program. The state standards, in other words, they were done by the state.
Right.
Then whatever, and so Hillary and NCE had to put their stuff on their computer for a little while and just leave it there. But they kept working in the background. All right, pretty soon here came Bill Clinton. All right, when Bill Clinton got elected, he went to, the White House, and of course Mark Tupper moved in right down the block and got a 600% salary increase, and NCEE took off again. Okay. And that's when we came all the way through that time. I think I said George H.W. Bush.
Right.
George H.
There's a role
Bush.
for George W., which we'll talk about in a minute, but that was George H.W.
I got George H., then we had Clinton, then we had George W., then we had, coming out of all that, of course, came out the Obama.
Well, let me ask one question about George W. Bush, because he did, under No Child Left Behind, there were some centers around the country that were teaching reading. They were trying to bring back the basics, and it was short-lived, wasn't it?
The Reading Initiative, absolutely. The Reading Initiative was a good thing in No Child Left Behind. The AYP and all that other stuff, that Goals 2000 stuff and all those false, unrealistic expectations were ridiculous. That's where he went wrong. And that's where No Child Left Behind went wrong. But as far as the reading initiatives, those were good because they were to teach children phonemic awareness, decoding skills, which is phonics. So that was a good time.
But it didn't last.
But anyway, it didn't last. So after that time, here we go with the Obama administration, which was the perfect storm, because then you could put all the type tours together. And that's what they did. They all got together, and they, took some of this stuff from NCEE. And so Hillary's the root of this thing. She's a birther of this whole deal. She's totally in league with it. All these type tours think alike, okay? And their whole thing, of course, with Obama, you had the second part of it, which is not just about education at all, or even the workforce. It's the indoctrination against America to destroy American exceptionalism. So you've got that added aspect with him and with Arnie Duncan. And, of course, you've got a huge, huge emphasis on the LGBTQ agenda, which is just huge. And that's killing us through Title IX, which is forcing all this gender identity into our schools and so forth.
We're going to have you back and do a whole hour on it.
Right. I would like to do that, Penna, because I need to tell people about that too. But anyway, so here you have then the Common Core coming in. Okay. Now talk about candidates. Okay. I hope we all understand how really bad Common Core is. It is not just about, I said in the very beginning, it's really not about education. It is about indoctrination. And I think we're seeing more and more of that all the time. And we're seeing it lived out in the lives of these riots that are occurring throughout our country. These are people who are responding now. They've been through not by reason. Reason is gone by the wayside. Logical thinking by the wayside. We always just react with emotion. We don't wait for the facts to come out. We just respond. And that's because they've been taught this way through the whole time that they've been in the public schools. Okay, so here we go with the candidates. Now, I want to tell you, again, these are personal experiences. I started researching a Common Core from the very inception, and I have been researching and writing and trying to get people to understand. In about 2011, somewhere in there, my husband and I went to a small meeting here in town. We live in Central Texas, and Ted Cruz was running for the Senate, U.S. Senate. And so we went down there to see what he was like. And I went in there fully prepared, as I had done with all kinds of other candidates who'd come through our way, through our area of Texas or wherever we were, and we were meeting them and so on, trying to vet them. And I'd always go into this whole thing on Common Core, and and they'd always just ignore me. Nobody got it. They just didn't have time for it, didn't know a thing about it. I started in with Ted Cruz, and he cut me off. And he said, and he started into this very vociferous response. I mean, he knew all about Common Core. He knew exactly why it was so bad, because he had seen it lived out in his father's life. The father, remember, had come from Cuba. He was under the Cuban dictatorship. He was tortured. He was imprisoned there. He went through all of that, and he saw what happened there as happened in Nazi Germany, where the children, their minds were polluted. They were taken over by the adults who wanted to indoctrinate them. He'd already seen all this through his own daddy's life. And Ted Cruz saw through the whole thing from the very beginning. He saw that it was this whole thing tied together, that if you can control the national standards and on with this plan that I just read to you a while ago, well, you could control the outcome of the way the kids' hearts, minds, and souls think. And so he knew all about that. And he said then, he really meant it. And he says now, he wants to completely repeal Common Core. Now, we've had some of the political candidates who've come out since that time. I've told you about Hillary. We know where she is. She's totally in league with
Huckabee changed his tune on it.
I'm going to go through all these.
We only have a minute, though, so you'll have to do it quickly.
Sorry. Okay, well, you go ahead and...
Well, I asked you at the beginning who really gets it. Ted Cruz really gets it. Others have come around to it, but they may not understand, though, and they may not fight. Usually when someone really gets something, they'll fight for it.
And do you think we're going to have somebody fight to get rid of this mess?
Yeah, we are. And we're going to have to be right along with them.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll be right there beside them, Penna. God bless you, dear. And thank you for what you're doing. I hope I haven't talked too fast too long. But
you need to come back. I'm really grateful to you for setting the table here for us, but we need more especially I want to go through this whole indoctrination for anti-bullying and LGBT and all the other letters. So we'll have you back, Donna. Thank you so much. And thanks for all the hard work you do and for all the information you send out.
You bet. God bless.
All right. God bless you. That's Donna Garner. And she's one of those people that works in the background, really, and helps other people to understand issues. That's why I wanted to bring her into Point of View to talk about this. This is a campaign issue. And ladies and gentlemen, we need to make it more of a campaign issue because this is our future, the education of our children and the next generation. It's one of the most important things that we need to be about as a nation. And this election will help us to go perhaps in a different direction. We can actually make a difference on this issue. Parents have a say, or they should. So give us a call and let us know what you think about education. And I'll ask another question about the candidates right after this.
The Point of View Commentary with Kirby Anderson.
Should churches and Christian organizations be concerned if the Supreme Court legalizes same-sex marriage? You can answer that question with the phrase, "It's going to be an issue." Those are the words of Solicitor General Donald Verrilli. During the oral arguments on the same-sex marriage case, the question of how this would affect religious institutions was raised numerous times. At one point, the lead counsel in the case tried to assure the justices that declaring a constitutional right for so-called gay marriage would not require clergy to perform same-sex marriage ceremonies. Later in the oral arguments, the answers were not as encouraging. Justice John Roberts asked if a religious school that had married housing would be required to afford such housing to same-sex couples. The Solicitor General didn't really answer that question by asserting that the federal government doesn't have a law banning discrimination in housing based upon sexual orientation. But as sure as day follows night, you can be assured that such a law would be implemented either through the legislature or through the judiciary. Christian colleges and seminaries take notice. Justice Samuel Alito asked the Solicitor General about the right of religious groups to keep their tax-exempt status. After all, the Internal Revenue Service was allowed to strip Bob Jones University of their tax-exempt status back in the 1980s because, at that time, they had a policy against interracial dating. Justice Alito asked if the same principle would apply to a university or college if it opposed same-sex marriage. The Solicitor General paused and stumbled over his answer. First, he claimed that he couldn't answer the question without knowing more specifics, but then he admitted that it's certainly going to be an issue. I don't deny that. Justice Alito, it's going to be an issue. Yes, it's going to be an issue for churches and Christian organizations if same-sex marriage is legalized in all 50 states. He seems to be saying that these groups can either have a biblical view of marriage or their tax-exempt status, but they can't have both. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Welcome back to Point of View. I am Penna Dexter. Our number for calling is 800-351-1212 if you would like to join our conversation. We have been talking the whole program about Common Core and education, so we would love to hear from you on that. And then I have another question if you'd like to weigh in, and that is, as I mentioned earlier in the program, the GOP hopefuls were on display in South Carolina on Saturday over the weekend. And one of the statements was made by Rick Santorum, former Pennsylvania senator, and he was certainly a candidate that many on the right really loved in the last election. He said, Commander-in-Chief is not an entry-level position. And certainly there are a few candidates who have never even been in politics, some that have never even run, that are in this contest right now, including Carly Fiorina. She's actually run. She ran for Senate from California, but she lost. She's never held office. And Ben Carson is another. He has never run or held office. And so this is a question. We discussed a little bit on Friday on our weekend edition. But is Commander-in-Chief an entry-level position? Could it be? Should it be ever? That I would love to hear from you on that issue. And also we are taking calls on the issue of education. I do want to get back to just kind of wrapping up on Hillary Clinton, because there are two articles at pointofview.net about her role in education and how she really was a spearhead, and she and her cohorts, Ira Magaziner and others, they actually changed the course of education in the country. And she started when she was in the governor's mansion in Arkansas, continued as First Lady. And they co-authored a plan. She and Ira Magaziner He now works for the Bill Hillary and Chelsea Clinton Foundation, by the way. It calls for teachers and child care workers to play a larger role in the upbringing of minors. This is the government acting as family, and certainly we've seen more and more of this. Parents, they said, would play a supportive role. Parents, we do trust our schools, or we want to. We want to trust our teachers, but we need to be wary because there is an agenda coming from the Federal Department of Education where the schools would have much more influence and they would push the parents aside. Have you noticed that? We have more after-school care, which is necessary because people work. We have school-based clinics providing contraception, referring for abortion, other health care that's going on. This is one of the agenda items that Hillary was putting in place, tying together education and health care and academics all together under one rubric, changing the worldview, changing sort of the role of the family. And, of course, her healthcare agenda failed in a sense, but in another sense, there's a lot of healthcare and meshing with education that we're seeing. A lot of money going to these school-based clinics. So, that's where this comes from, and it's very interesting. Now, they've made progress, but there are also pushbacks that happen, and sometimes you get these agendas for more phonics, better reading skills, as under George W. Bush. We had these reading clinics. But then when Obama came in, actually even before Obama, it was when the Congress taken over by the left, and they wiped out these reading clinics because it's not part of the progressive agenda to get better readers, because these people are more better educated. They're more able to oppose agendas and learn and discern. So you see where we're going here, because it's really an attempt to get control of the next generation. And then, of course, de-emphasizing academics, going toward this affective type education, changing the student's worldview is all part of this. This is really at the root of it. It's philosophy number 2 that Donna Garner mentioned. And then an emphasis that happened under this whole agenda of outcome-based education changed from students getting knowledge to students being able to do things, moving from educating the whole child more to a workforce type agenda, and the schools becoming workforce training and even placement. Now, we wish it was placement in a sense because these kids are coming out and they're not prepared for the jobs that are out there. So it's not even working. And then we have Common Core, which is not a plan, again, for a highly educated populace at all. And it's not really education. It's more like workforce development. It's also been called standard-based education. Standards don't sound bad, but national standards are bad when they move the populace to the left, which is the attempt, and also to remove Judeo-Christian values and God out of the schools. I mean, that is such a general and broad overview, but we wanted to give that today. This is the program that Jeb Bush supports and supported in Florida. He's trying not to talk about it much anymore. He's got to talk about it. And so does Hillary. And so do all the candidates as they're out there. And so if you have any influence in your local area, if you want to write letters to the editor, things like that, to keep this issue alive, I think it would behoove you. Point of View listeners have always been, ever since the inception of this program, interested in public education, private education, and just how our young people are educated. That was one of Marlon's visions back when he first began doing this program. He got a real education from his guests, and we got one today from Donna Garner. So that is what we've been talking about. We'd love to hear from you. We've got folks calling in on the issue of education. Let's take a few of those calls now. Let's go to Ray in South Carolina. Hi, Ray. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, how are you?
Great.
I was listening, and the way the teacher was explaining how they're dumbing down America's young people, I think that's exactly right with the Common Core being brought in, because, like I was saying, if you've ever read the novel of George Orwell's 1984,
sure,
how everyone was a slave to Big Brother, and with the Common Core, when they tell you some information or anything like that, you're not going to know right from wrong, so you're just going to go along, with the program and not have a mind of your own to think, well, is this right or is this wrong? You're just going to be a puppet and do what you're told when you're told to do it.
She mentioned databases too, and even I think there are a lot of parents who they really sort of operate a homeschool along with their kids being in school. I've noticed a lot of parents that do this. They'll let their kids go to school, but then they're also trying to debrief them from some of the things that they're learning at school. That's a good thing to do. But they're going to find that out in the tests, and if they have databases on the kids, they're going to know which kids are really getting with the program and which aren't.
Because it's like this. I heard a lady tell me one time, before, she was around when Hitler came in power and took over, and she said the way it began was they slowly started taking a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, and she said you don't miss it until one day you wake up and everything is gone and it's too late.
Wow, pretty sad. Well, thank you for your call, Ray. We really appreciate it. Let's go now to John in the state of Michigan. Hi, John. Thanks for waiting.
Are you referring to me?
Yes, I am. Thank you for calling.
Oh, okay. When you said Michigan, I missed it.
Are you not in Michigan?
No.
Where are you?
I am in Michigan, yes.
Okay,
yes.
Good.
But everything went quiet when you said the word Michigan, so I wasn't sure what state you were referring to.
It was quiet for you. We're ready for you.
Yeah. Let me get to my point. I am advocating, have been for quite some time with other people, to defund government education. This seems, and I get an awful lot of pushback from my Christian friends and so on about doing that.
That's all the way down to the state level.
Well, completely defunding government education. Here is the rationale for this. In the first place, when we look at the appropriate functions of government, government itself has no business being in education. Now, we can go back through our American history, but that's not the point here. The point is the principle of the thing, and that is that government doesn't have any intrinsic purpose in being in education. And what government does, whenever it gets involved in something that it has no rightful business in, it begins to dominate it, and there becomes a policy type of thing where some political party or some view takes sway, and then it's forced on everybody.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what has happened with education. And the only solution for this, for the Christian element, is for communities locally, for parents and grandparents to work together, aunts and uncles too, for families to work together, and churches to set aside.
Okay, let me jump in. We're coming up on a break. I'm going to keep you over the break if you don't mind. I want to continue to ask you about this. I want to send you, ladies and gentlemen, to pointofview.net. To our action alert section, if you would like to weigh in on the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. It's really the fetal pain bill banning abortion after 5 months. I think it makes a lot of sense. You can weigh in very easily if you go to pointofview.net.
Are you ever frustrated with America's leaders? I know. Are you ever not frustrated? So, what are you doing about it? In Proverbs chapter 21, the Spirit of God hits us with this: the king's heart, and we could say the president's heart, the senator's heart, the congressman's heart, the Supreme Court justice's heart, is like channels of water in the hand of the Lord. He turns it wherever he wishes. Your prayers unleash the most powerful weapon in the universe. If you're in union with Jesus Christ, your prayers touch God's heart. So again, what are you doing about your frustrations with government? Point of View Radio is spearheading a new effort to get as many as possible to pray for America. It starts when you visit our website, pointofview.net, and click on the Pray for America picture on the right side of the page. We'll send you our Pray for America booklet and updates on things to pray for. We must pray. Click in now to pointofview.net and pray for America. Point of View will continue after this.
are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Penna Dexter.
If you get email from us here at Point of View, if you get our emails, check your email right now because one went out today. It says, take action, share your point of view. Later this week, the House of Representatives will vote on the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. This bill would ban abortions 5 months and later into a pregnancy, after which medical science shows the baby can feel pain. And we've posted at pointofview.net an article out of lifenews.com entitled, House Will Vote on Bill to Ban Abortions After 20 Weeks, near the anniversary of Kermit Gosnell conviction. And, of course, that infamous Philadelphia abortionist, his conviction, I guess the anniversary is Wednesday, and they may have the vote that day. They like to have these pain-capable votes on anniversaries. They tried to have it at Sanctity of Life week, apparently back in earlier this year, and there was some problems in getting it out to the floor. Republicans, though, now in the House of Representatives are going to hold this vote right around this anniversary of the murder conviction of late-term abortionist Kermit Gosnell. This is out of lifenews.com. This is a marquee bill to ban abortions after 20 weeks, 5 months, ladies and gentlemen, 5 months pregnant. My daughter is 5 months. Actually, my daughter's 7 months pregnant. My daughter-in-law is 5 months pregnant. And that shows that's a big, well-developed child. I mean, we don't support any abortion at any time. But since abortion is the law of the land, can we not at least as a nation ban abortion after 5 months when the child, obviously, according to scientific, all kinds of scientists now are saying that they feel pain at that point, probably much earlier. This is the second time, according to this article, and it's posted at pointofview.net, that Republicans have planned to vote on the major pro-life bill. And this vote is expected to take place this week, probably Wednesday night, probably Wednesday sometime, which is the anniversary of Gosnell's conviction. And what happened before in January, Renee Elmers, who's a congresswoman, she led the charge to sabotage the bill. She was supposed to be for it. She'd said she was. But then she went in and disagreed with a requirement in the bill that rape be reported to a law enforcement agency before the abortion is performed for rape. So there's an exception for rape and incest. And they wanted, Renee Elmers did not like the fact that rape had to be reported. But ladies and gentlemen, that just protects girls because the rapes could continue if it wasn't reported. Again, Republican leaders in the House had planned to hold this vote on the anniversary of Roe versus Wade. They turned around and they put in another pro-life bill. They pulled this one. And now it's, after all this time, they've negotiated. They've got a very strong fetal pain bill. And it's something, I was talking to Donna Garner about education, and parents can do things about education if we actually weigh in. Same with the life issue. Pro-lifers have made so much impact since Roe versus Wade came down from the Supreme Court in getting parental notification laws, parental consent laws, all kinds of clinic restrictions and protections, and of course the partial birth abortion ban. Well, this kind of caps onto the partial birth abortion ban because that one stopped late-term abortions too. This one stops them because the fetus feels pain. That one stopped them when the baby was being born intact and killed on the way out. Well, this one has more to do with the other kind of abortion, which is, and excuse me for being graphic, but it's when the baby is torn limb from limb and then aborted. That's painful. And so that's the point being made here. We want to ban these abortions. Again, go to pointofview.net if you want to weigh in with your member of Congress to let them know that you would like them to vote yes on the ban, on the pain-capable abortion ban. Just go to pointofview.net, take action, and in there's a message. You can either send that message, it'll go directly to your member of Congress, or you can revise the message if you'd like to change it a little bit, and you can send it. It's very easy, an easy way to weigh in. Again, go to pointofview.net. Well, we're talking about education. We had an interesting call from John in Michigan wanting to advocate defunding of government education. He's not just talking about from the national level. He's talking about all taxpayer funded education, I assume. John, continue along with your recommendation.
Yes. I was going to say that the thing that can be done locally is for parents. This doesn't have to be, we don't have to wait until we defund government education to do this. But the Christian community needs desperately on the local level to churches work together, parents and grandparents helping their children who have children, and aunts and uncles, families, and so on, working together with the churches in the area to establish local alternatives to the government education system. And I want to clarify my terms. I do not call it the public school system anymore. Every time I refer to it, I talk about government education, because that makes very clear the reality that this is no longer what we used to think of as public education. It is not public in the sense of parents having local control like it used to be. That's gone. The laws and court decisions that have been put in place in the last 30-some years have pretty much stripped the local boards of control of the material and the methodology that's being taught and the indoctrination philosophy and so on that's being taught in our government education system. And so there is no way now, we've gotten past the point where there's any redemptive value in continuing government education. Now, going back to my original principle, that government shouldn't be involved in it anyway, let's look at the alternative. The alternative is private education. Now, to make that work, we have to get government out of it completely. We can't be taxing and just turning the money over to parents to take the money where they want to. We have to get government out of it, because taxation takes with it some kind of government control. And we do not need government control in education anymore. The private sector is better on the whole in most every way that is possible in educating children. But parents need to be left with that money instead of being taxed and have it filtered through the government system. Parents need to be left with that money and their families and churches so that they can fund their own education system. Now, here's a critical difference between private education and government education in the view of most people. And that is that if we privatize it, what's going to happen to inner city schools where so many parents don't have the capital in their pocket to be able to fund, and they don't pay much in the way of taxes for schools either in a lot of those cases, because they're on government assistance and so on. If we trust the people, if America is really a big-hearted country and we trust the people and we don't tax these enormous quantities of money from the pockets of the electorate to fund this way over-bloated government education system, there will be plenty of money and plenty of good-hearted people who will through individual action and through good foundations and organizations will make sure that the people who need to have their children educated, they will be educated. I'm confident of that because of the spirit of the American people. But we have to get government out of it. In the meantime, we have to develop an alternative, a Christian alternative that teaches our children the foundational biblical principles of life and moral responsibility.
John, this is all just, this is really common sense. And we need to kind of move forward because we're about up on a break. But it makes a lot of sense. And, how it gets done and all the the nails and the hammers and all of that would have to be a discussion for another day. But it certainly makes a lot of sense. The whole idea of just not taxing the people to pay for education and then letting them go find their own educational system and figure it out.
Absolutely.
So that makes a lot of sense. So thank you for just putting that out there. And certainly we can unpack these ideas more going forward on Point of View. We do continue to take your calls here in the final segment of Point of View, and we thank you for everyone that has been involved in the program. I also wanted to throw out one more question. having to do with all the candidates. And that is it even possible for someone who has never run for office or held elective office, is that crazy to run for president? There are a couple of people that are running that have never held elective office. And Rick Santorum says you shouldn't do it. Commander-in-Chief is not an entry-level position. Well, what do you think? 800-351-1212. I wanted to throw the question out, see if anybody bites on that question. And we do continue also to take your calls on education and on this pain-capable bill that's just about to be voted on Wednesday in the House of Representatives. It's an important issue and certainly timely. So we'll discuss it right after this.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Well, on Saturday in Greenville, South Carolina, a full slate of Republican candidates for president and likely hopefuls were campaigning, and they gave speeches, and one of the top themes was national security. There's a real angst there, and they all got to weigh in. But it was interesting, this one statement by Rick Santorum, who ran for president before, as many of you know, and was also senator from Pennsylvania. And he said, Commander-in-Chief is not an entry-level position. I thought that was interesting. He has been a senator, but he lost his race to Arlen Specter. And now certainly he's been out there speaking on many of the issues that you folks care about. But he also says now that you need to have experience in politics to run for president. That's basically the gist of it. So I wanted to know what you guys thought about it. Let's take a call from Steve in the state of Texas. Hi, Steve. Thanks for calling in.
Hi, Janet. How are you?
Great. It's Penna.
Oh, Penna. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Penna, I think that's a valid point Rick's making, but is there any is there any history on candidates before running and being successful as a president? I didn't do any research.
I think the only
this,
one is Dwight Eisenhower, but he was a general.
Okay. Well,
and I could be wrong. We do need to research it.
You know, if we have a man or a woman with moral fiber and character, and I mean, you know, that's got to be better than what we've got.
Okay, great. I'm going kind of quickly since we're in the last segment, but I wanted to get your opinion, Steve. Thank you very much. Moral fiber and character is the most important thing. I cannot agree with that. It's very important. Let's go back to the phones and speak with Franklin in South Carolina. Hi, Franklin. What do you think?
Hey, thank you. Well, I was washing my car out in the yard, and you touched a button with me. Not only do I think they shouldn't be able to run for president if they never held office, I think we need to even emphasize they should have to have served in some type of military before they can run for president's office. It's humiliating to people serving in service. They put a guy in there over them, tell them what to do and how to do, and he's never even served a day of time, or she's never served a day of time in their life. I think you need to put that top of the line, and then if they never held a second, if they need to be held some office too. It's just, I just think it's humiliating the way we let certain people.
Did you serve, Franklin?
I did.
So you'd like to see the commander-in-chief have military experience too, and political?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks for your
Yes,
call.
ma'am.
We appreciate it, and also your service. Thank you very much. Let's go to James in Georgia listening in on GNN. Hi, James.
Yes, ma'am. In regard to the gentleman from South Carolina, and if we're talking about commander-in-chief, I agree wholeheartedly because these people with military service are trained and paid to do a job. And when a civilian or a entry level comes in there, has no idea. You don't know if he's listening to advisors tell him what he wants to hear or not. But initially I called in to state that our first president was entry level.
George Washington. There had never been a president of the United States before him.
That's correct. And if you're left within the lesser of evils if it's not open to an entry level person.
Okay.
And sometimes if you don't get something fresh, you're going to continue to get what you already have. And we're at this point, we don't like what we have.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess my question though is, and I'd love you to weigh in, is it important to have political experience? I mean, I don't want to make a hard and fast rule here, but we are looking at one, Carly Fiorina, who's run, but she's never held office. We're looking at Ben Carson, who's never run before. And we're looking at some quality. I mean, I think this field is just really brimming with quality. They're great. But is there an experience factor that should be considered in here?
Well, I totally agree that we do have some blessed individuals running. Politics, you've got to have some experience on how to run the show. I agree with that. But I can't see why a person such as a Ben Carson could not surround himself with quality people who can advise him and let him, from his own moral convictions, make decisions that govern the situation.
Okay, thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, what do you think about this? What's your thoughts on this? We have a few more minutes before the end of the program. Rick, thanks for calling in. I'm sorry, Rick is here. Rick from South Carolina, listening in on WAGP. Thanks for calling.
Yes, thank you for taking my call, Penna. I am probably in the minority, but I think that an entry-level person can run the country. I think your last caller alluded to surrounding himself with quality individuals because the job is so vast in scope. You have to know defense, you have to know policy, you need to be an economist.
You need advisors anyway.
Absolutely. And the advisors have to be the best and the brightest. Now, what the president or the presidential candidate requires is a vision where this country needs to be. And then he needs to, or he or she needs to have the ability to convey publicly in a platform what that vision is and why.
Okay. We are losing you. You keep cutting out, but I think we've got the point. And a vision needs to be cast, whether or not this person is experienced politically. And so that's Rick's point of view. We'll continue on this. I know we'll be talking about this a lot as this campaign moves forward, but I wanted to ask the question. It looks like we've got opinions on both sides. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. I want to, again, give you the opportunity to be part of our action item, our take action item. If you get emails from us, you got one on this issue. It'll be very easy just to click through and take action. And if not, just go to pointofview.net and click on the Take Action button. It'll take you through to this really vote that's going to take place in Congress. It's on the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. It's sponsored by Representative Trent Franks of Arizona and Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee. It would end about 13,000 late abortions each year, and these are 5 months and later. This is after which a fetus can feel pain. The bill bans the killing of these children, which is when medical science shows they can experience pain. We know that abortionists like Dr. Kermit Gosnell have been convicted of murdering born alive babies and also performing abortions of unborn children very late in development. This bill will help to stop this. It's a pretty ironclad piece of legislation. Again, you can go to pointofview.net, and this allows you to weigh in with your congressman very easily with the press of a button. There is a little spot where you could write your own paragraph or revise our paragraph. Ours has the facts, so if you send that in, you're going to be getting your point across. But you may want to make your own comments to add to that. It's very easy. Again, just go to pointofview.net and to the Take Action item. And this vote's going to take place Wednesday night, so now would be a really good place to go there. Also, you will see information about the guests today, the articles that I mentioned, the ones about Hillary Clinton, and the donate button is there. And we, as we always ask and let you know, that we are a listener-supported ministry. So we would appreciate the best gift that you can give that the Lord would lead you to share with us to help keep broadcasting every single day. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll look forward to another show. Thank you so much, everybody that helped to put things out on the air today, for Doug and for Catherine and for Chris. We thank you, and this is Point of View. Thank you for joining us today on the program. We hope and pray you'll have a great night. Don't forget about our Take Action item. It's really important. We'll see you tomorrow.
Did you hear about the marriage this month in Thailand of 3 men? Yep, 3 men, 1 so-called marriage. But no relevance, that's Thailand, you say. But last August, a U.S. federal judge struck down parts of Utah's ban on polygamy. What is marriage? Well, the U.S. Supreme Court is deciding that question right now. If you don't believe such things impact you, what do you think the schools will teach once the definition is open to anything that people want it to include? And how will the government enforce their definition on you? It's well past time to simply complain. We need to pray. This is one reason that Point of View began its Pray for America campaign. Visit our website and get your free copy of the booklet, Pray for America. Read it and join thousands of people across the land in praying for the court and the nation. We'll also send updates on other special needs to pray for. Pointofview.net. Pointofview.net. Click on the picture Pray for America. Visit us right now, pointofview.net. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.